Hi, I'm Johnny from ultimatepapermache.com, and what I'm going to show you today is not a tutorial because I was just playing around and experimenting and kind of saying every once in a while, gee, I wonder what would happen if I would do this or if I would do that. I really have fun with projects like this when I don't know what I'm doing and I'm just kind of flailing about, kind of picking up ideas from totally random places, and then somehow it works. Like in this particular instance, I got a random comment from a reader. I happened to read an article by Dan Reeder years ago. I had some materials here in the studio that I haven't even looked at for a whole year, and it all came together in a completely different way than I've ever done it before, just because the materials happen to be sitting right next to each other, and it really worked. If you have any experiences like this, please let us know in the comments down below. Tell us what you've discovered just by accident, some new way of doing something, something that you've made that you didn't know how to do it when you started out, but you came up with some really cool ideas for making it work. I would really love to know about it because I just really have fun with this whole idea of learning by accident. So what I ended up with actually appears to be working. What I'm hoping is that we can put the little goblin out. This is the Daddy Goblin. He's a Minnesota goblin, so I'm going to have to give him a hat. And he's going to be one of a whole family of goblins with bodies and everything who are out in front of my my garden fence stealing produce. I think this one, since he's the Daddy Goblin, he'll be handing a pumpkin or a squash or something to Mama, and then the rest of them, the kids, will be running off, and it just I have no idea what it's going to look like. I've never done anything like this before. If you watched the last video, you saw me making this guy's face using some oil-based plasticine over one of my little mannequins. I printed this pattern at 60% and then put the clay over it, and I made this little face. Here he is close up when it was just clay. That's not a permanent sculpture, obviously. It's just oil-based clay, so you can't just leave it that way. You have to actually, turn it into something else. And one of my readers just happened to ask me if you could put plastic over a clay sculpture and then put paper mache made with Type Bond wood glue over the plastic and create a mask. I had done exactly the same thing once before, but using a water-based paste instead of the wood glue, and it worked really good. This is the African mask that I made that way. It's on the wall in my guest room, and it is still holding up just fine. I think it's like 3 or 4 years old. But she was concerned that maybe the wood glue sticks so well that it might stick to the plastic sheeting, and then she'd end up with a sheet of plastic on the inside of her mask. And did I know if that would happen? And I said, I don't know. I never tried it. So I thought that maybe I would try it on this guy, put it over that clay model, take the clay out and then stick it back on, and then I'd have my little goblin guy. Well, I did find out that the wood glue does not stick to plastic. You can let it dry and just pull the plastic off. It works just fine. But when I started in on this fellow, I decided very quickly that I didn't want to do that because it would have required little teeny pieces of paper, maybe 1/3 of an inch wide or even less. This guy has really little details, wrinkles under his eyes and around his nose and stuff. And in order to catch all those details with any form of paper strips and paste, I was going to have to end up using tiny, skinny pieces of paper. I didn't want to do that. I'm too lazy. But I have had this plaster cloth sitting around in the house for over a year, so I decided that would be a really good thing to use in this fellow. And I could use bigger pieces because the cheesecloth that plaster cloth is made over is so openly woven, got an open weave, I think that's what I was trying to say, that it can form over almost anything without creating wrinkles. So I could use big pieces of plaster cloth, which is what I did. If I had used the paper mache and the wood glue, the plastic wrap would have been essential. I tried paper mache over the clay before and without the plastic, and it really didn't work. But in this case, it just wasn't going to help. Paper mache is flexible, and I could have just kind of lifted it up over those muscles that go on the side of his face, but I wasn't going to be able to do that with a plaster cloth because it dries really hard. And I also knew from previous experience that the oil-based clay is not soft enough so that I would just be able to pull this off and just like let it pull those muscles in the clay with it. I was pretty sure it wasn't going to work. I let it harden, and I forgot that I had put paper mache clay over that little mannequin. It's this little size because I printed the pattern at 60%. This is a new one that I made, by the way. The old one's in the garbage. I had made all the big mannequins that I created with this pattern just with paper strips and paste. And here's one of them here. I basically use these big ones just so I can have something to put my masks on when I want to take a picture of them. But for some reason, I didn't look closely at the little mannequin, and I forgot that I had put paper mache clay over it. So it was really hard. In order to get the face off without ruining the plaster cloth shapes, I had to cut open that mannequin and just take it apart, which was really hard because paper mache clay dries hard as a rock. But I did get it, and then I was able to pull out the mannequin pattern and the paper mache clay, and then finally I was able to pull all of the oil-based clay out from inside of the face. So far, so good. So now, of course, I have to have a new mannequin or something to hold up the face. I could have just made a ball of crumpled paper and masking tape and put the face over the front of it, but I decided, since I knew for sure that the mannequin, if it was printed at 60%, would be exactly the right size for the face, I went ahead and made a new one. You can see it's in two different pieces because I had to have access to the inside. He's got a mouth open, and if I just put him straight on the mannequin, then you could see the mannequin inside of his mouth. I didn't want to do that, so I cut a hole in it. I made sure that I was putting the hole in the right place with my pen, and I just cut a hole in the mannequin, and then, which wasn't easy, I put some crumpled foil in the back of it using some hot glue. So I pushed that in to make a dip in the mannequin. And then I decided that he needed something at the top of his mouth. I don't know if that was really necessary or not. It was kind of a pain in the neck to do it, but I did it anyway. I just cut a piece of cardboard, taped it on. Then I put the mannequin back together so we had a neck. And I put paper strips and Titebond wood glue over the mannequin. The reason that we're using the Titebond wood glue in this whole project is because that's what Dan Reeder used for one of his dragons that he put outside with his cloth mache. Then I turned my little plaster cloth guy over and put some of the paper mache inside of it just to make it a little bit sturdier. And I did use the Titebond wood glue for that paper mache on the inside of his face. I don't know if I really needed to do that or not. I think if I did this again, I would try to strengthen the inside of the plaster cloth, just because if you put too much plaster cloth on the outside of it, it's going to cover up all the features. So if you can turn it upside down and then do what I did basically next, use the plaster cloth and the glue on the inside to strengthen it instead of trying to put the paper on the inside. You'll see what I mean by plaster cloth and glue in just a second here. I used 2 layers of plaster cloth on most of the face, but there was one area right over the eye where I only used one, and it was just too thin. Before I put the face back on the new mannequin, I decided to just try to fix that. And I didn't know how to make the texture be the same as the rest of it. I mean, I don't know that that's important because the texture is kind of weird, really. Although he's kind of weird too, so maybe that doesn't matter. But I had some little pieces of plaster cloth sitting on my table, and the glue was sitting there because of the paper mache that I had just put on the inside of it. So I dipped my plaster cloth, just a little piece of it, in that glue and rolled it up and used it on that eyelid. And I was really surprised that it worked. You can't really put new wet plaster over plaster that is already dried. It won't stick. Not usually anyway. Sometimes you can get away with it, but usually not. It doesn't work. But this time, because I used the glue instead of water, it did stick. I mean, and it worked really good. So then it was time to put the face back on the new mannequin. And the paper strips and wood glue weren't really sticking all that well either. But because I had just used the glue and plaster cloth on that, I decided to go ahead and try using that to hold the face onto the mannequin. I kind of held the face onto the mannequin temporarily with a strip of masking tape just to press it back far enough so that it wouldn't move on me. And then I put one strip of the new, what do we call it, plaster cloth mache, I don't know, over that area, and it held really well. It hardens really fast, even though the plaster doesn't move around on it, so it's not really doing the same thing it usually does. But the glue is going all the way through because of all those little holes, so it's very tightly glued on there. And the plaster that's on there is getting hard really fast, so I didn't have that problem with it slipping the way I did when I was trying to do it with the paper strips and glue. So I decided to, well, okay, let's go ahead and finish the whole guy up and just hold it on here with the plaster cloth dipped in glue, not water. And then after the face was all attached really good and I had filled in the area under his chin, then I put some crumpled foil behind the ears to hold them up, stuck it on with some hot glue first, and then covered that whole thing, including all of the ears, with the new plaster cloth and glue. And so that's what we've got now. Long explanation for what I did, and a lot of it was just trial and error. Like I said, I would run into a problem, it didn't work, and so I tried something else. Now, what I'm going to do next, and as a matter of fact, I've done it a little bit already, is I'm going to mix some more glue with a little bit of water and brush it over this fellow. I'm hoping that'll make it weatherproof enough so that it can stay out for maybe a month before Halloween. Now I know how I'm going to do the rest of the family. So what I will do next time, I'll go ahead and make another one of the little mannequins, maybe just a tiny little bit smaller for Mama Goblin and one a little bit smaller than that for baby goblins. And I won't cover it with paper mache at all. I'll just go ahead and use the oil-based clay directly over it. I'll use the plaster cloth directly over the clay. If I don't think it's going to be stiff enough to hold up, even if a bird sits on his nose or something, I will go ahead and use the plaster cloth dipped in glue on the inside just to stiffen it up even more. And then I'll put it on a new mannequin just like I did this time. So that's it. That's what I got. Lots of messing around. I don't know exactly how wood glue reacts to plaster. If you have any chemical expertise on this sort of thing, please let me know if there's something else I should be doing to make them more waterproof even. I will be using some outdoor paint over it, but let me know. I mean, this is totally new. I don't know if anybody's ever done this it's kind of crazy, so I don't know if it's been done. So if you have any ideas of what we should be doing next, please let me know, because I'm going to make a whole bunch of these little faces and stick them on goblin bodies, so I kind of hope that they'll stand up to the weather. So if you have any ideas, let me know. Leave a comment down below. And then in the meantime, go make something and come visit me, ultimatepapermache.com. I'll see you there.